Senate Appropriations, and we're continuing our work on the 25 budget, and we are taking testimony from the Department of Mental Health. And so we have the Commissioner, Deputy Commissioner, and Financial Director who are here to present the budget proposal on the budget. I guess I will ask the Commissioner to kick us off, and then you can sort of yield to whomever, whenever. So thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you. For the record, Emily Potts, Commissioner for the Department of Mental Health.
And I'm Shannon Thompson, the Financial Director for the Department of Mental Health.
Allison Crump, Deputy Commissioner, Department of Mental Health.
So I wasn't gonna spend a lot of time overviewing our system. We were just gonna get straight into the ups and downs on the spreadsheet. Does that sound like an okay approach?
It does, and we don't need to go line by line. Sometimes some changes are very, very modest.
Yes.
I think probably the discussion is gonna be not what's in it, but what is not in it, in terms of you know, the community-based delivery system and what's being proposed there. So,
Sure.
do we have that, the ups and downs sheet?
It's right there.
But do you want to put it up? What, no, we don't need to. Is there anyone meeting remotely? I don't think so. No.
You read it?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, just memorize.
Mhm.
Okay.
You should.
If you say anything wrong, Rich will.
All right, so everybody's got this ups and downs, or if you want it to go on the screen?
Got it.
Well, you got it, okay. All right, then why don't we go and
I'll turn it over to Shannon Thompson.
Thank you. So for your request, I can.
well, that was easy.
Thank you.
It's all in your memory.
That's all I had to remember.
Right.
I'm gonna try that when I present the budget. I yield to joint fiscal.
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously. Big ups are associated with personnel,
Yes.
salary and benefits, and of course, we're having the new, childcare contribution payroll. That's showing up here, so, that's all to be expected.
Yes.
It's a pretty skinny budget.
Mhm.
I don't see much other than what you absolutely had to do, but no reductions,
No reductions, no.
just level funding for everything other than the state. Part of,
Well, not necessarily. There are a couple of programs in here that we're requesting some increases for.
okay. Perhaps you could.
We'll start with those.
Yeah, right, if you would, and then obviously, some are conversions from general fund to global commitment, so you picked up the federal share there. Okay, well, go ahead.
Okay, so as you mentioned, there's the salary and fringe, the internal service funds and workers' compensation, and then the other personal services. That is all, really, the other personal services is not a savings, it's just that funding was originally put there for class action reclassifications, and now it's up in the salary and fringe line, so we no longer need it on the other personal service line. So I just wanted to point that out. It's not necessarily a savings, it's just that it's now moved. One item that we have here is the increases for our psychiatric care hospital. It's the contract for psychiatrists. UVM is no longer providing the services, so we sent it out to bid, and Columbus organization
Was the winning.
That is precipitated response from Senator Lyons.
You're probably gonna continue in your presentation on that. Were you gonna talk about who's providing those services and whether they're local or whether they're?
With Columbus.
We'd be happy to do that for you.
Yeah, this is a great opportunity to talk through that. So the Columbus contract is, they are a national organization. The physicians who they have contracted with, the medical director was the current medical director. And so he transitioned to the Columbus contractor, from the UVM Health Network. And then two other psychiatrists who will be full-time there also transitioned, from their work within the UVM Health Network to the Columbus contract.
Okay, so now there are all three then full-time within the psychiatric hospital?
Correct.
All three are full-time for our psychiatric hospital?
Yeah, so the psychiatric hospital has 25 beds and the average caseload for a psychiatrist is around 7 to 8 inpatient folks. So that facility actually has 3 full-time psychiatrist positions and a full-time medical director. And so we currently have a vacancy in one of those full-time psychiatry positions that we're recruiting for. But the folks who are working there were folks who were working within the system previously.
So those physicians will be based in Vermont then?
They do live here,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Senator Strong.
Yeah, I don't know where I read it or I thought we only had nine patients here.
Sure, so currently there are enough staff and beds for up to 21 persons. I believe the census might be closer to 13 today. They've had an increase in admissions recently. But there are open beds there. They can serve up to 21. And the only reason why they wouldn't be at 21 is lack of referrals of available people who meet the level of acuity and involuntary status that facility serves.
Well, the only reason I raise it is we're running at 2/3 level, but we run at a full-time staff.
Correct. We aren't at full-time psychiatry staff. We're,
Even with 3.
yes, even with 3, we're not fully staffed.
Okay. Other questions? Someone?
So how long does the contract run for?
I believe it's a 3-year contract with an opportunity to extend for 1 year, 2 years or more. I couldn't figure out how to state that clearly. 2 1-year extensions. For a total of 5.
And that's all general fund.
It is because it's the hospital and
I
the
know.
hospital is the Institute for Mental.
Yes. And I am. Okay. Other questions about that? So. With that occupancy rate, we were talking about reimbursement rates to other other programs, including one coming in retreat.
Mhm.
And then, of course, the one in Bennington.
Mhm.
And the question was, and I realize that you're the ICU, the top end of the system, not children, so what is the cost per patient? How does that look like compared to like when the hospital opened?
I would say when
And
the
I can't even
hospital,
remember, was it 3/4 of a,
it was about 2,800 a day when the hospital opened. And we're not at that anymore. I think we're closer to 3,800 for a daily rate.
if you were translating it into a rate, obviously you're not. Other questions? Otherwise we'll keep going. That's somewhat different. I mean, obviously, fee for space, those kinds of things,
Mhm.
are right across the board. 988 increased volume in chat and text. Is that the suicide prevention line? And you have 2 agencies that are
Yes.
providing that service.
Yes, that's correct. Northwest Counseling Service and Northeast Kingdom Human Services. And then Headrest will answer, it'll kick over to Headrest if those 2 aren't able to answer.
Yes.
Is that an increase because it's new or there's just been that much of an increase in the use?
Do you wanna talk
It's-
about that, Sharon?
Sure, it's an increase because the contracts increased. When we added chat and text, and a call volume, that required an increase.
This is just only the up from what's already in the budget,
Right.
so what's the
Correct.
total now then with the 451 plus what's in your base?
This would put in our base, I believe it's 1,166,000 would be in our base. We had 715. And then we're adding that, we're requesting to add the 451.
Does it check?
And the take up has been quite strong, I understand.
It has, and consistently since changing to the 3-digit number of 988, that really almost doubled the call volume. And recently we're close to 900 to 1,000 calls a month. In the beginning, it was more around 250.
Does that include the text?
No. Texts are around 100, 150 now a month.
And do you think that's all because of the change of the number and easier access, or because there's more people in need this year?
I think it's both.
Probably hard to isolate when you got, because I think so much more attention has been given to suicide prevention and the numbers and stuff, so it's probably. But I think probably having a 988.
We've really been pushing for folks to call that number versus having to digest
Well, let me ask,
individual numbers throughout the state, right? Just call 988.
have you seen any, well, the numbers, I don't know whether they're enough to start seeing any kind of trend. We do know suicidal rates are higher for the northern tier states. Interesting enough, I don't know if it's because of shortness of days and lack of sun, whatever it might be, but that seems to be very much
Yeah.
aligned with geography, so to speak, Senator Weston.
How much more, have we been publicizing the 988 number than we were before?
Tough question to quantify, so I'd have to think about a good way to show that. But certainly with some,
How much you putting into advertising?
Advertising.
Because I've seen advertisements for the 988 number, and I can't ever remember seeing advertisements, for.
the 1-800 number.
Yeah,
When they shifted to 988, the National Center did a great job providing media toolkits, which I think helped a great deal. So not only did we get grant funding to promote that, but we had a kit to use on how to do it, what to say, and what's the most effective way to get it out. And I give that the credit for it.
and are we continuing that? Are those ongoing grants to make sure that we continue to get that number out there?
Ongoing 988 marketing is a priority for the state. Right now, we're writing our strategic plan. So I think that's a good point you're raising to find out what's in there and is it enough?
And the Department of Health gets a lot of federal money. A lot of those ads that are on, in fact, seem to be developed by, I don't know, CDC maybe. So I don't know whether Samson's doing these grants for you.
Yep.
Whether they have plans to maintain some kind of national campaign, similar to some of the others we have.
I would just say, I'm sitting here watching and it comes up on the TV, which is all,
I don't know how you have time to watch.
that's where I fall asleep at night.
I see.
I'm sitting in the chair falling asleep and get told, go to bed.
Oh, okay.
TV told you to go to bed?
Yeah.
No, Joan does.
It's yeah, right, watching TV. So what, other comments or
I have a question.
Yes,
I have a question about, remind me what S3 is. What's S3?
Legally.
Sure, so S3 is also Act
Legally.
57.
Yeah. okay.
And so that's from the 2021 legislative session, I think. And what it does is it provided one-time funding for attorneys for Vermont Legal Aid to represent individuals. We think it meant to be ongoing, but it was one time. So this is a request to continue that work.
And that can be, that's the 275, the state added.
275, and then there's another section to that 275, yeah.
Right, the 275 is 250 for Vermont Legal Aid, legal staff, and then 25,000 for evaluations.
Mhm.
And then up further, you have the conflict counsel, that's $25,000.
So it's 300,000.
So it's a total of 300.
All the legal. claim.
No, just the 250 is the legal aid. The 20, or was it 30,000, 20,000 for competency evaluations and 30,000 for,
And no, it's the 25 is for evaluations, that has got a legal aid as well.
oh, it does,
And
okay.
then the conflict counsel is separate, that's $25,000 for additional legal.
And who are they representing or just providing advice?
The representative
And what,
in the criminal case. They're part of Act 57 did a transition if somebody's going to, for their competency, gets transitioned over to a collaboration between the defense attorney and Vermont legal aid to represent the individual. And they hired, 2 attorneys to fulfill that.
instead of just the defender folders?
Right.
All right, other questions? And now we're down to where you're adding it all up. Now, obviously, a lot of mental health is delivered through your community organizations. My understanding is, last year we did do an increase, and we split it up. Part was to start trying to get some equalization among grades. So I was just wondering if you could speak to how that is going. And then, of course, there was 3% was, everybody got the 3%. This year, and I know that we were using enhanced federal match, and therefore that lower match rate has been more demand on the state match side. So this budget includes no provider increases for those agencies, if I'm understanding it correctly. However, you are putting in more money for the mobile crisis response. Or maybe you're not. It looks like you're just moving it from general fund over to full commitment. So it's no more money, it's just moving from one and the other. Could you just speak to, I know why you're doing that. I mean, agency's gotta come in with bottom line, and there's only so much money, so I'm sure your first response was not one to level fund those services. But have you some sense of what the impact will be? Because obviously we're hearing from other people that, you know, particularly in children's services, it's there's a waiting list. It's hard to get clinicians, workforce, just like we've recognized in state government. Those agencies are immune from those very same costs, whether they be insurance or wages or competition. So I'm just wondering if you have thoughts about or when you make a decision to be able to identify 100 years ago, when you propose something, then it would be, what will be the impact? And I guess that's what we're kind of asking here. One would think that it won't help reduce the vacancy rate. It will conceivably add to the wait list for certain populations. I could probably list it myself, but that's all inherent in level funding. And I know that's very hard because we hear on the other side, schools are saying, well, you know, mental health, and it was like, well, you know, if you're asking one part of the delivery system to operate with no increases, and right now the estimate in terms of what schools think they need to spend is up in the range of 18 or 20%, you're getting tremendous disjuncture between what is happening out there in the field. So there's a collateral impact because they're saying, schools are saying, well, we have to compensate because mental health and provide service with the stability and predictability that we need. So it's it doesn't go away necessarily. It just it's where the response is coming from. And the advantage, I think, in terms of the DAs is that it gives you much better clinical support. You've got other colleagues that are, have a lot of clinical depth, and if you're only one in a school, then you don't have a supervisor, you don't have that kind of and then clinical backup that would come if you're with an agency that is got you know, very experienced staff, so. I guess you can tell me our assessment of what can happen is wrong, but, it's something that we're struggling with this budget. And anybody who's here wants something new, and we have lots of people that want something more. I guess it's kind of indicative of, you know, our core services.
Well, we had testimony this morning in judiciary. And 3 state employees with the Department of Children and Families who work directly with kids. And the one from Bennington reported a 4-month wait to get mental health services from the local designated agency in order to deal with the kid. So what is going on in those 4 months is putting added pressure on them. They're frequently seen in emergency rooms and other places. And all 3 reported that the community services that they rely on in order to deal with kids in and out of, in an in-home environment are lacking.
Well,
So I think, you know, this budget, I'm not criticizing the Department of Mental Health. You're doing the best you can with what you got, but you ain't got enough. And I think we better take a good hard look
and
at
what we're funding.
what we're funding and what we're not funding, because we have. It was also reported today that, which surprised me some, just as in the mental health and the corrections field, those who are developmentally delayed or disabled are now coming into the DCF system and not being dealt with by Dale, who was in here yesterday, and I wish I'd had that testimony yesterday when they were in here. But if we're shuffling kids between systems, and systems not designed for them, we're asking you, mental health, we're asking DCF, we're asking corrections to be all things to all people, and that's impossible. So I'll get off my soapbox because I'll get out of here by 2:15. But I don't know how I'm gonna vote for a budget that doesn't meet basic needs.
Either that or we're gonna look at
Basic
what we're spending on that
responsibility,
and
basic
then redirect
responsibility for the
maybe.
state.
We should go
And
through.
people
the
are talking
discretionary
about
program.
spending millions more on new programs.
Well, they, are going to be, disappointed. I'm pretty sure. The other thing that we do have, and that is, privately practicing clinicians. So the Medicaid program, if in fact, you have a child that's covered by Dr. Dinosaur, for example, which most are, then, they could access, therapy services.
If there's a therapist.
If there's a therapist, that's the other thing, and the extent to which they're enrolled in Medicaid, but last I knew, and I don't know, Rich Donning, I can look at it in the Viva book, but it was 25-30 million, I think Viva was paying for the privately practicing clinicians. So there is something out there if you can find them, and there probably is an access issues because of the shortage. And I guess all we're expressing is, our concern about what we're setting ourselves, you know, fully understanding the implications and the collateral impacts, like Senator Sears is saying, from what happens here and what are those kind of rollout.
Do you mind if I respond for a second?
I'd love
Just-
to have you respond.
Yeah, you make a,
Am I waiting for the but?
no, what I was gonna say is, you know, we targeted, you don't have a lot of policy initiatives from us this year, mostly because we're still waiting and determining what the impact of our policy and investments were from last year and then the year before, and one of those main pieces was enhanced mobile crisis. which offers that 24/7 support to individuals outside of a hospital setting. So could go to a school, you know, doing that and then allowing those services to meet the requirements for an enhanced rate. So we are still waiting for that specific targeted, because at that time, we saw so many hits happening in our emergency services. So we targeted emergency services on purpose. And so that we could maybe interject earlier, intervene earlier, and stop just the flow where somebody has a community intervention and then right to the hospital. And so I think, you know, what we really tried to do is target specific services, think about specific populations. You're right. There is a private system. And there are adults and kids who can be served in that private system, whether in person or via telehealth. Those are options. Folks, though, can be served in the private system who are CRT. And that's who our designated agencies are serving. And so we are having conversations about that particular population. And also youth. With Success Beyond $6, but sorry, community rehab.
But it's really the population that seriously is persistently mentally ill.
Absolutely, sorry.
You have to let people know. So that's what CRT.
I didn't know it.
Yeah, sorry about that.
And it's community rehab and treatment, but the population is really the individuals that maybe historically would have been served at the state hospital.
Mhm. And our provider system does a really nice job at serving folks with high needs in our community. And so, you know, you make a good point, adults and children can have access to a broader private system. If you're in a seat in a designated community rehabilitation treatment, CRT, your option is the designated agency. And so what we want to make sure is that they're able to provide services to that group of folks.
Well, I appreciate, obviously, you're saying with these limited resources, how do we really utilize them in the most strategic way?
Did you want to add, Allison, to that?
The only thing I'll say is we did have these federal opportunities for one-time dollars, and those are still being invested this year. And I think that'll be an interesting thing to watch, to say what we might be coming forward with in the coming years of base funding to support those going forward. But there's a lot of things that was pushed into the system on a very strapped system with very limited staff. And so right now, I think the commissioner said it well, that we're looking to prioritize the limited resources we have.
Do you have questions?
I remember S3 now.
Oh, good.
2022.
Did you sponsor it or something?
Yes, but the other, the question is, so the money that was put in for legal aid and for, support services, was that put into base funding? Because we did it. I mean,
No, it was one time.
it was all one time. but
Yeah.
Now this is
So now we're asking for
the
ongoing.
success rate for that, and, because we've had tests, maybe when legal aid comes into committee next week, in our committee, I can ask the question about how well that's been utilized. Because we are looking at S192.
Mhm. Yes, and that will,
S192.
That's another bill that you're going to see.
Um,
We have no
money.
appropriation.
Oh, good.
there's no money to it.
No money.
But that, the functions of that, the functions of that bill will rely heavily on the Vermont legal aid attorney that are representing individuals. And I do think it is giving improved representation for folks who have rights. And we have appreciated the collaboration with Vermont legal aid on those cases, so.
And it also goes to the comment that Senator Sears was making about the relationship between Dale and DMH, because now we've got two different groups of people accessing that representation.
All right, well, on that cheerful note, I have a question. At least the sun is shining, maybe snowing, but the sun is shining.
The only,
Yes,
the only other one I have is, we have a facility in Brattleboro
You mean
Yes.
the retreat?
The Brattleboro retreat.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you're running just ahead of half occupancy, are they running half occupancy as well?
No,
And, I mean, anytime you run any type of a business or facility, an agency, whatever, at 50% or 60% capacity, certainly gonna cost you a lot more than if you could run it at 100% or close to it. And I just,
Some of the fixed costs are the same, whether you've got 15 or we've got 20.
are,
I said the fixed cost is the same whether you've got 15 or you've got 20.
yeah, and
But, but this is the psychiatric hospital, I mean, the criteria, that have to be met in order to access those services are, it's not, we've got some entry beds, so let's move them from Brattleboro up. It's for a very different purpose, and many, in fact, are adjudicated, I mean,
Yes.
their placement, so it's not like the retreat.
so like Northeast Kingdom Mental Health can't refer people.
Well, they can, but if someone has to go on an involuntary basis, then that requires, a court.
they're ordered through the court, yes.
Yeah.
But that doesn't take days. You could have somebody be screened and referred to the Vermont Psychiatric Care Hospital or Brattleboro or any of our inpatient units on an involuntary basis. The VPCH serves has a little bit more of a narrower entrance because it is only involuntary, whereas a Brattleboro retreat, they have level 1 beds, highest acuity beds. But an individual could go there voluntarily if they needed to, and they required additional services to have the appropriate treatment. But you want to have the beds available when you need them. It's an interesting dance to do. And we also have been surprised at the low levels of folks presenting as needing the higher acuity. I don't anticipate that. I would be surprised if that stays the same. But our goal is to have, yeah, it will, there's still more to be revealed with that.
Other comments or questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank
you. Going on here. And appreciate your coming in. We're going on to the Attorney General's office, a good way to finish up the day. Are they, I wonder, in the waiting room,
Okay.
commonly known as the hall?
Oh, it's like, yeah,
No, they're not. Maybe they're zooming in.
Well, there's a reward for that, or, thank you.
They got 5 minutes. They don't look far away.
No, they don't.
Time to go get lost. Time enough.
Were you at the crime meeting in Willistown?
Which one? Which,
Um,
the one a few weeks ago?
yeah,
And when you were the
Yes.
panelist?
Yes, I was on the panels.
I see that Senator Clarkson has withdrawn the increase in our salaries is struggle with property tax. Raising property taxes over 20%, how can we also just apply increasing our rates at Allison Clarkson?
But that just reinforces that somehow we're deciding
We're not,
that spending
we're
level.
not,
Huh?
Yeah, the majority leader is really sticking up for us.
Yeah.
but there's a difference there. Yeah, exactly. Does the school board vote for our salaries?
I wish they did.
Yeah.
I see.
Well,
Maybe we should, do that.
I mean,
Maybe we should become,
Teachers.
Said we're raising property taxes over 20%.
we are not doing anything until we know what budgets get
I know,
passed.
it's unfortunate
And
that
I-
our leaders make such statements.
And Barry opted not to delay their budget vote.
I don't know. I mean, Campbell's bringing in, they didn't get into that 5%, anything above that is pretty much, I understand a couple of school board members thought that was pretty slimy. So they're not, their budget is fine, but others, including the towns, many of the schools that benefited from the weighting actually went in and spent more on top of it. So, that's what's happening is that,
I think,
it's so hard to tell people that you decide the level of spending, not the legislature, but, it's, huh?
I think they're on Zoom.
Would you like me to go offline for the conversation or just?
Are they on Zoom?
No, I'm just,
Oh,
we're still on live, so I was just.
Well,
curious.
I thought they would be here shortly. So this is a good time to simply say, we set the tax rate. We don't determine who, or the level of spending. That is done by local
the
voters.
tax rate is dictated by the spending.
Absolutely. Last I knew, that was how it worked.
Yeah.
So
Well, it can.
so I guess
and-
statements need to be very carefully worded because there's already so much misunderstanding or confusion around what the legislature controls.
Well, we can control the weights and the CLA in some ways.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that,
But
with all the utility companies, when they take their budgets in front of the PUC, they're required to do tree removal and they're required to have a capital fund as they move forward. In a lot of the schools where they're above the 5%, they have put padding in the budget. There are school districts that have not put money away for school construction. And
Sort of like a capital fund.
well, I'm
And
just,
and
No.
we should look at that and say to schools, you need to think about that.
what needs to be a singular message. And I said this before about the governor's message to the legislature that it's our job to fix. And yes, if we can do something to lessen the burden, we should do it. But it is basically on the local level. And Howard Dean recognized that years ago when he called on communities to defeat their school budgets if they were over a certain
Well,
percentage.
he also suggested a statewide school district.
Right, I know.
That,
But still, their budgets, if everything falls into place just right, their taxes may go up 50%.
Well, there, I will say,
Yeah, because they're,
I
I
don't
think
know
they're-
where.
I think they're getting-
I suggest that we, probably since we don't have the Attorney General's office, we're still,
There's one person who's on Zoom, she may have an
Marcy?
idea about where.
Marcy? Is she-
Good
she's-
afternoon.
are you ready to testify?
Charity is on her way into the building right now. So she should be there momentarily, but yes, we're ready.
All right, well, I don't see her. Maybe she's in the hallway. You want to go look?
$5.6 million in its direct.
Bobby might not recognize
I
it.
haven't seen the capital.
I heard no, we used their budget.
he's out there.
Six,
Okay.
yeah, the 1.6.
We're ready.
You're ready. Okay, we should go get the Attorney General.
Oh, they just said she was in the hallway.
School construction.
she's coming right now hallway.
So.
Coming down the hallway, I'm looking in the wrong direction.
High school, that.
They all stuff that.
Yeah.
Okay, Charity.
Yes.
Coming the other way.
Oh,
I thought she was coming from over there, but she's coming down up the way.
all right, so, we have two. Oh, my goodness, we're getting the, well,
The entire office is left.
like that. Oh, that was important, so.
Right, so you've got all the answers.
Well, I don't know about that. You certainly don't. That.
First step, some.
Everyone got the, document in here? So we're continuing our, testimony on the 25 budget. And we are gonna be taking up the Attorney General's, budget at this point. We have the Attorney General, we have the Fiscal Director, and we have for diversion and a very familiar face, Will Farrell. I think probably there's a lot more information than, we need to go through today, but, it's good information relative to the, work that your office has, undertaken and gives us a sense of what's happening. So that's great. So I'm gonna turn it over to you. Obviously, what we'd like to do is Senator Sears needs to leave at 2:15.
Okay.
Just to give you some idea, and give us really the highlights and, you know, what's in this budget, other than probably as little as you could possibly,
Well, what I'd like to do is, because I know you're all familiar with our office and our budget from your years of experience, so I don't think I need to go through a lot of that. Why don't I go through some of the highlights and the changes from this year's previous
that's all we
years?
want.
Perfect. Okay, so, one thing I want to highlight from the first slide is we have a new mission. That is because we've engaged the Chief Performance Office to, devise a new strategic plan. It has been a wonderful process, just passing on the information that we've been very impressed with the folks we've worked with in that office, and we have a new mission that is a lot went into this statement. So I draw your attention to that. If you could read it for you, it's right there. But
It is what a good statement,
thank you, I appreciate that.
particularly equal right and justice to all.
I know, isn't that good?
I know, it's such a powerful statement, I mean, you know.
That's her job.
Yeah.
It is. It was a joint project for the entire office. The entire office was engaged. So I'm really proud of the work. And we have the whole strategic plan to be rolled out soon. We're just finalizing it. This next slide, I think is probably stuff that would be familiar to you, but I will just draw your attention to the 677,000 increase due to legal expert witness process change. The overall impact on the state is there's no change. It's just our budget that's changed. So a process that involves us getting involved in this way, so that it shows up on our books instead of someone else's. So just highlighting that's no fiscal impact to the state. It's just a change in how
Does
it's
it
done.
show it down in somebody else's book?
Yes, I believe so. Marcy can pipe in if she disagrees with me.
No,
you
it's not.
Agree or agree?
I disagree.
Oh.
It's not gonna be a down in somebody else's because they're just gonna pay us instead of paying suppliers. So our up is in IDT.
Oh,
It's
got it.
not in general fund or anything like that. So it's a
Yeah.
net. zero.
So we should see it twice.
Yeah, right, so you can see it twice. So the next slide number 3, is highlights about our work. I do want to just tick through some of these, so that, you know, you can be oriented. We're pursuing several cases. Some of these cases have asks. In fact, potentially all of these cases, they all do, they all have monetary asks. So if we are successful in our case, whether we are successful at trial or if we're successful in a settlement, there will be hopefully money at the end for the state. So these might be ones that this committee in particular would find interest in following as we go. The first is our case against the fossil fuel companies on a consumer protection theory, i.e. they concealed
Similar to
information.
tobacco, maybe.
Yes, it is similar. They concealed information from us. Then they also told us their products were greener than they were, a greenwashing element to that case. The next, of course, is our PFAS case, which will be familiar to all of you, especially those from Bennington County.
Well, I want you to know, the little town of Craftsbury, for example, Bennington's got all the attention, but they haven't had safe water supply.
Look at all the contamination. That's why we have the attention.
Well, no, Craftsbury,
Really give it up.
well, no, I'm just
The
saying,
attention.
it hasn't been limited to Bennington.
No,
Um,
PFA, no, it hasn't.
So.
Yeah, it's the
Stay away.
forever chemical. That's,
You
it's,
know,
It's everywhere.
But we're seeing new areas of Bennington.
Yeah.
which now are there
Right.
as well.
Okay,
Our opioid work continues. We still do have cases ongoing in that investigations, I believe. So that is one that we certainly have already obtained a lot of money for the state that are generally long-term sort of settlements. Facial recognition technology company, that's Clearview AI. Our case is set for trial this year. Meta, we just sued, of course, we're ruling on that case for Instagram's harm to teens. We sued them in state court here, but there is also multi-district litigation happening and other states also sued, kind of coordinated effort. Monsanto, we sued recently for their marketing, making, selling PCBs, not chips, and the impact.
sorry, Sten Perswick has a question about one of these.
On the Meta, did I see in the press that it was Meta and TikTok?
We are doing, we're normally, we're coy about our investigation,
Right, yeah.
but publicly we have said, yes, we are investigating TikTok, so I
So it's a
confirm
separate
that.
case though, it's not. part
Yeah,
of-
they're different entities, yeah. So we already sued Meta, I think this fall somewhere.
And these are all multi-state.
No, that one is, well, there's other states doing their own thing.
Right.
Some of them have joined forces on a federal level. We sued here in Vermont in state court.
Is that the only one like that or?
No, I think there's others too. I wanna say maybe Tennessee.
No, I mean, all the other cases,
Oh,
of these ones which are multi-state. Just that you did on your own.
the opioid ones, I think. I think the rest of these, Rob, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the rest of them are our own case in state court.
Yeah, just for the record, I'm Rob McDougal, the Deputy Attorney General, and on this list, opioids is the only animal that state. All the other ones are cases that we brought in state court. Now, some of them, like, we had 2 PFAS cases, right? We had one about the PFAS we all know, another about the firefighting foam.
Right.
That was removed into a multi-district litigation with other states, but all of these, except for opioids, were cases that we filed as the state individually, not with.
And there are other states that might be suing Monsanto, for example, that
Absolutely.
might combine at some point, but it's a
Right.
state case.
Yep.
So moving on to just ticking through some others that might not have a financial impact, but I wanna show you the work that we're doing with the money that's allocated to us. We secured a jury conviction in a first-degree domestic violence homicide. We, of course, defend proudly the laws that this body passes, and that includes right now a large capacity magazine ban on waiting period, as well as the Crisis Pregnancy Center lawsuit. We also provide general counseling to state agencies, including contract review and guidance on the changing laws. It's sort of bread and butter for us. We are leading on privacy and data security. This includes enforcing the data breach clause, and we also ensure compliance with data broker registry. And we're advocating, of course, for a data privacy bill right here in the State House this session. And we recently announced that we had returned wrongfully withheld security deposits for motel program participants, $310,000. So we're really proud of that. So we'll put that on the list too. Again, these are just highlights. We do a lot of stuff, as you know. We have almost 150 or roughly 150 employees, 99 of whom are lawyers. So we do a lot, but there's the overview.
Yeah.
This next slide is
Yeah, on the motel, deposits, the state didn't pay those deposits,
yes, DCF pays them on behalf of the participants.
but the participants got the money back.
They were supposed to get the money back unless there was damage done to the motel room, and the security deposit would be used towards that.
Those were
So they're
federal
starting, why
dollars.
did we get the money back?
Yeah,
We-
why
they were
didn't
federal
the state get-
That was designed that way, I can't speak for them, but I will, but I think the idea was that the motel participant would have the money. They did the right thing and kept the motel clean and neat and undamaged. And then they got money that they could use toward, a deposit on their apartment or whatever. You could talk to DCF, not me, but that's my understanding.
We had testimony in Joe.
Okay, cool.
And that question got raised, and these were federal dollars,
Yeah.
not state dollars, and the benefit was made to the individual, not to the state.
Yeah.
And so the state was not eligible for the recovery because we did not fund the benefit, it was federal. So.
If we continue with big fund group,
Well, then we can obviously, have set our own rules, but it was because of the, a ruling by.
Yeah, like
by
the restriction, they were encumbered.
So, so they got the money, of course, the cost of the legal action you had to cover as part of your.
Well, we
operation.
never had to go to court. We settled before we got there, so the like fiscal impact of people in our office was pretty minimal. We had really just one attorney working on it, and we were able to get those monies back. So.
But that's, that question came up.
Well, I hope that whatever committee's in charge of our money paying the bill, that the money doesn't go back to people that didn't pay it in the beginning. I don't know. It's be in your vote or somebody's.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, where would it?
Well, it would be a,
Yeah.
It is DCF.
it is DCF. It a lot depends on which program, but this was this special program set up through the federal ARPA money, and it was part of the COVID federal funds that came through. So, but the legacy of setting that program up is on it today in terms of alternatives and the cost. But let's keep going.
Okay, so the next
Just want to
slide,
make sure Senator Sears heads south when he needs to.
okay, yes.
I have to say.
Okay.
So the next slide is just the highlights of the major areas of increased expenditures and major areas of decreased expenditures. So I've already mentioned our change in process, and Marcy clarified regarding the expert witnesses. The rest are going to be familiar to you.
Yeah, they
I'm sure
are.
everyone else has these. So in decreased expenditures, we reduced our reliance on temporary employee utilization, and we also have increased vacancy savings from increased position costs, which probably is other, the agency probably have that as well. Here's the funding solutions and cost avoidance. So we have, one of our funding solutions is increase in the amount allocated to us from our consumer fund. And we also had a general fund vacancy savings increase from increased positions costs and the indirect earnings increase, which is along the same philosophy as the vacancy increase, that we got more money there. So those are the funding solutions we have. The increased efficiency and costs. When I became Attorney General, I merged our environmental division with our public protection division to create the environmental and public protection division. I did that for a few reasons, but one of the outcomes was that we saved money. The other thing is, I mentioned we reduced our reliance on temporary staff. So there's our
What is organic service? That is a new one.
I know, I love that. Marcy probably has some like great financial explanation for why it's called that, but the long and short of it is when senior people leave and they're billed with less senior people, it's cheaper. Marcy, did you have something you wanted to explain why?
Well, I
it's called
certainly
organic?
understand that. It's just the term.
I know, I love that.
It's a new one.
I know, I love that too.
Okay.
And then historic expenditure avoidance measure I wanted to flag is that since 2011, our division chiefs, of which we have 5, I think, their only salary increase were by way of the ADIs. Now, the next portion gets into the details. So normally I have Marcy walk us through this. So Marcy, if you want to take it away.
And look, we only want to go through the highlights because I can see some very small, like 2,300.
Yeah, you don't bring that.
You know, I'm looking at this and I don't see anything, that seems to be
Yeah.
extraordinary, in terms of, what your ups are and, there's not, you know, it's pretty, it really parallels your earlier, comments about where you found the money and.
Yep.
You know,
You are observing excellence in action. This is Marcy at work, makes everything that does a great job and makes it tidy and then explains it really well.
well, I looked at the ups and downs sheet, I thought this wonderful way of
I know,
showing how you get to the bottom line.
I know.
Since I did it 100 years ago. So, okay. So it's really very, I mean,
It's straightforward.
it's very
Do
straightforward.
you wanna just keep moving?
Yeah, I think we should.
Okay.
I mean, if we had questions, I'll just look around.
Yeah, just
And
stop.
see, but otherwise, I think it's very, there's nothing controversial there. And it's just reflective of
Yeah.
the very modest changes, so.
So
we can
the
keep
next
going.
slide we have is on the consumer assistance program, which of course is how most Vermonters interface with our office, so it's kind of our constituent wing of the office. There's some data that might be familiar to you, about our constituent contacts, the percentage of closed complaints, the average constituent recovery. The thing that I want to highlight for you is that it's not unusual that a satisfied customer, if you will, is someone where money itself was not really an issue. So I'm thinking about someone who has their propane turned off. You know, we're the ones who are using the propane rules and laws of the state to help that person get the propane turned back on. Well, that's not going to be accounted for in any kind of, fiscal resolution.
Is that still high? I remember years ago, there was a lot of this.
Well-
Complaints. You had a list of like complaints.
Yeah, we could get one. We can pull them from the database. I would just say that this legislature had a foresight to put in place really protective propane laws, and it's amazing. People call us in despair and fear, and we're able to help them because of the law that was put in place by this legislature. And I'm really proud, because I'm sure that most states do not, prioritize that, and we have poor people living in rural areas who depend on propane, and
How do they know to call you?
1-800-649-2422, I have a tattoo on my arm. And I say that all the time in my sleep, I'm mumbling as I turn over. I have a feeling, after all these years, the word has gotten out that we can help. And we, of course, are always, I'm doing, social media and posts and stuff.
Oh, your community action and your 211.
And they all, yeah,
Right,
they
they would-
they all know we're in communication. And truthfully, we have good relationships.
Sent out from the propane.
Yes,
They're
absolutely.
required to.
That's right.
We did that in resources and then send that out.
Yeah.
His contact.
I was gonna say, we also have really good relationships with the propane companies. I mean, and sometimes it's someone a smaller outfit, and they don't know that they might be connected to a bigger outfit. So we work with them too. I mean, that's part of what we do at the consumer assistance program. We're not just dealing with the consumers, we always want to deal with businesses as well, so. But I wanted to just highlight in the next slide, I did make a couple of changes, when I arrived. I already mentioned the environmental and public protection division being united. The other big change I made was, you might not know this, but when I was chief of staff, I was also the director of the consumer assistance program. It's kind of a lot. And I spent like one day a week there, and they're incredible. So they did a great job despite having not having a designated leader that only did that. But to me, it was very clear that that was needed and that we would be providing better results for Vermonters if I made that change. And so I did. Chris Curtis is the director of the Consumer Assistance Program. He was formerly the chief of public protection, and he's doing a phenomenal job, as you can see in this chart. So our calendar year recoveries were like dramatically up in 2023. I think that's for a few reasons. One, better reporting, because Chris is there helping to support and helping to make that happen. Also, if you recall, it seems like so long ago now, but I'm sure it's because I had the wildest 2022 ever. But in 2022, you passed a home improvement statute, and part of that was to create the home improvement specialist position at the Consumer Assistance Program. So the person in that role is doing a phenomenal job. Gabriel Taylor March, he used to be a paralegal, and he also used to be like a contractor, so he's the perfect person in that role. And he has been very successful at helping consumers get some recoveries back and navigating and helping to mediate settlements between contractors and consumers. So these are just some highlights about CAP. I wanted to flag those for you. And Chris was also the lawyer who handled the motel deposit recovery matter. So we're really proud of the work that he and others at CAP are doing. You guys know this on the next slide about enforcement settlements. I'm gonna just, as a reminder, we often will announce a settlement and it has the full number of what we settled for, but not all of that money is coming to the state. It might be, restitution for the individuals. There might be an amount of money made to a nonprofit.
So what is a dormy? We got $34,186.
Oh, with Dormy? Wait, I asked that too. I wonder if I can remember. I bet Marcy can.
And Renaissance jewelry, 1,000. I mean, pretty.
Where are you?
So I'm on
Slide
page
13.
Page 13 is, I knew you guys would love this one, so let's move
I
on to
just
page 13.
I must have missed
I
that.
think it might be like, I want to say it's lingerie. Am I making that up, Marcy? No.
I think it's undergarments, yes.
Undergarments is a better way to say it.
Oh my
I don't
gosh.
see it.
It's on the right
For
column.
year to date, this one, right after Renaissance jewelry.
Adore me, oh, got it.
Apparently, Judy, you and I have invested.
Oh, Rob has more on Adore Me.
Oh, yeah.
It was a lingerie subscription service.
Uh-huh.
And it was billing consumers going forward month to month, and so it was like a opt-in, opt out, and it was,
We call it the evergreen problem where you're like trying to, and they give you like a, 5-day period to opt out. It's like, this is not
I
meaningful.
know, I did that with Amazon.
Yeah, we all have a story.
Yeah.
You're like, how do I get out of this?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go, left-hand column is the
Carnival
2020.
Corporation do it to Vermont.
Well, look at you.
Carnival.
Oh.
What'd they do in Vermont? I
The
mean, they don't
cruise?
even have a ship on Lake Champlain.
We're landlocked.
We got a new boat up on Joe's Pond.
Yeah.
I love it.
Right.
like, that was a data breach. So it was
Ah.
Vermonters that had used that service, and there were 163 or something like that, so it
Oh,
wasn't.
okay.
You were not, and Carolyn, but you're maybe us.
I don't remember getting a notice of the data breach on Carnival. I do own stock there. Run Road paving,
They're on their
they
twenty.
must have done something horrible there in 2 years in a row.
Well, I don't know about that one. I can't say.
Or maybe the payments came in
It's the
over a
same thing.
multi-year period of time.
Yeah.
A very long period
They
of
shut the
time.
plow operator?
What,
RC.
just a minute, RC's, what?
The payments are coming in over a very long period of time.
Yeah, okay. that's
They've
all.
been on since I've been here.
I'm gonna suggest we look at
I don't
the
think
data.
we should start.
So
Why don't you start?
just, I wanna highlight for 2024 a couple of things. The Indivior, which we call the Suboxone case, is of course another opioid matter. But I wanna highlight Blackbaud. As you can see, $3 million is a ton of money in our grand scheme of things. And that was a national case that was led by Vermont and friends in Indiana. And it was because of our data privacy expertise in our office that we could identify the problem, which was in essence, a company that handles nonprofits databases made egregious violations of our privacy laws. And because we saw big opportunity and the problem and felt that they should be held accountable with our knowledge, we got a massive amount of money. And when I was looking at the settlement when they came, and I was like, 3 million justified, yes, but then when I saw other states like New Hampshire got like less than $100,000, we got 3 million, and so I'm bragging a little about the great workforce that we have, because that is a lot of money, and Blackbaud has changed the way that they do things now too, so it feels good, they do things differently, they pay the money, so that was a good story. I wanted to just touch on tobacco. You guys are familiar with tobacco. As you can see, 2023 has more money. I think that's when more people are smoking, probably due to the stress of the pandemic and our crumbling world. So it's kind of a sad story. Hopefully that will improve.
Remind me of that.
Well, they're buying the flavored tobacco before it goes on.
Like it's the tax goes stuff and like can you
Wording it.
It goes to the general fund.
So this is just the total.
Great, total is yes. So this is the master settlement agreement, which was settled in 1998, is so long and complicated, it's literally bound in a book. It's very long and complicated. So the calculation is made literally using like PricewaterhouseCoopers or someone. And it involves market share, which is why I mentioned the market, yeah, and usage. So more people smoke, we get more money. Essentially. So the future projections we've highlighted in a box on the right. And I see how it's really low, don't panic. That's because we're saying that you can rely on that, but we expect it to be higher, but we don't necessarily wanna say like, yeah, it's gonna be, 23 million or 26 million, and then it's not that, and we depend on it. So just know that we do expect it to be more, but that's the future projection. So Marcy wisely wanted to explain that to you. All right, let's keep going. We have our environmental protection settlements next. When it comes to environmental protections especially, our focus is trying to get the harm remediated. So you'll see the Parkway Cleaners case, that's going direct to A&R so that they can do cleanup. So we wanted to show you our work, but just know that, that's really our focus, and when you see that list.
That's the big one, that's pretty.
What was Green Mountain
Yeah.
Flowers?
Oh, gosh, that was small, I remember that one.
It was a water quality violation related to a discharge from the Goshen Dam, the Goshen Brook, and there have to be some remediation as well.
So we have the Medicaid fraud. We just wanted to give you an overview of different types of settlements first. Then we've kind of got the breakdown. How many global, multi-states, how many civil, how many criminal. The next slide is our complex litigation special fund, which we set up to help us when we've got a complex litigation and funds are needed, like for
We did that.
experts.
Remember,
Yep.
Yeah,
we did it.
yeah. So we have the examples, and it is very helpful.
This is how much is
so-
utilized, or this is how much you've put in?
Well, it's usually, Marcy can speak to this.
And I just,
Let Marcy answer then.
So we use it and then we replenish it out of our consumer settlements so that it's always at the end of the fiscal year at the $1 million balance.
Senator Westman.
who makes the decision on suspending like these environmental protection settlements? In due to inability to pay or hardship, or who makes those decisions?
Sometimes that happens in the consumer world as well, where someone can't pay. So it's really fact specific, and we often work with A&R and, we have conversations. It's like a huge process. We're negotiating with the opposing party, we're talking internally. So it's really, the judgment that we make. I don't know.
So they don't make that decision up front, they, the penalty is based upon what they do, and then they come back and say, we can't pay.
Yeah, so we might have them show like tax forms to demonstrate, that's what we do, to demonstrate they can't pay.
I wondered, but,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's taken into consideration. Rob, did you want to add to that?
No, it's typically when we have an environmental case, we score out a penalty based on the harm that was caused. The goal, number one, is always to fix the problem, right? So if we had a choice about someone putting money into a penalty or fixing the contamination, we always want it fixed.
Yep.
And then when we have the dollar figure for, accountability, we engage in a negotiation, and if a farmer, in this case, that farm, couldn't pay the penalty we're asking for, we ask them to show us why you can't, give us your tax returns, that sort of thing. We often will have tax forms going forward. So it's like we have the waive some this year and then give us your tax forms the next couple of years. If there's some kind of windfall, we can revisit it, but it's not just entered into loosely, it's a lot of complicated math to get to that point.
So now we're up to court diversion.
I know, let Willa take over.
We want to, well,
Good afternoon, Senators. My name is Willa Farrell. I'm the Court Diversion and Pretrial Services Director in the AG's office. And as you know, we have a separate line item under the AG's budget. We're very grateful that there's at least a 3% increase projected for next year, which is about 86,000. I think you're all familiar with court diversion, but I'll just quickly run through that we provide grants to 12 organizations around the state that each serve at least one county. They provide court diversion for family and criminal division cases, the underage alcohol and cannabis possession programs, a DLS driver's license program, and pretrial services. So it's a full array of services. I'll just really jump. There's 3 slides here. I'm happy to answer questions. It's similar information that you've seen in past years. The top is a much less expensive option for the state for court diversion compared to going through the court. We have our successful completion rates. And being aware of your time, I could just jump to the third slide, which captures my third slide, the final slide in your document, which captures a financial pressure that we've identified this year. So with Marcy, we did an analysis of caseloads for each program, and they provide us annual budgets, quarterly financial and narrative reports. And we've identified 4 organizations that together serve 5 counties where the caseloads carried by staff are significantly higher than in other counties. So those are named here. There's Chittenden, then Franklin, Grand Isle, served by one organization, Lamoille and Washington. So
And this is over and above what the governor included.
yes. So this is our request that you would consider increasing the base funding by almost 300,000, 296,700. And that would allow our grantees to add in 3 of those programs, 3 staff, 1 per agency, and then a half-time increase in Lamoille County. This would allow those organizations to bring their staffing comparable to the other organizations around the state. We rely heavily on, these community organizations, and they're doing amazing work under an incredibly taxing situation, working with people who are struggling with substance use, mental illness, housing crisis. And we want to be able to make sure those staff stay there and have manageable caseloads.
Senate Judiciary Committee, I think we're preparing to, like you as well, gonna take a look at all the criminal justice involved agencies, from the state's attorneys, diversion, attorney general, corrections, what exactly are the needs? The courts, take care of the courts, with 2 new judges, does that impact on diversion? What does it impact on state's attorneys, defenders? So the system doesn't operate in a vacuum. So our goal is to meet, but Senator Kitchell and I were having a discussion before the start of the meeting about April money. So, our core programs need to be funded or new programs. That's the frustration. We've got $100 million of requests.
It could be, and it could very well be some of the programs we're funding right now. We have to go back and reprioritize perhaps.
I also need to understand what the House is doing with their bill.
Yes.
Don't know how that impacts other items like barge and the Department of Corrections. There's a little bit of confusion over it has to do with diversion, and that's there was $600,000 to that many diversion programs that was intended to be one time, and they used it for ongoing expenses. And now corrections just said, well, that 600,000 isn't there. So
And we go with that is under the DA.
and you're familiar with that, so
Department of That.
so now we're talking almost $1 million in diversion.
I
That
think
300,000 plus the 600.
the 600,000, as I understand, is the funding that the Department of Corrections provided to organizations around the state. Some of those organizations are ones to which we provide grants also, but it's for a different set of services.
Understood, but they say they don't have. I'm just totaling
Yeah,
just 600,000 plus the
right.
300 that nearly 300 you're asking for is 900,000.
I appreciate you have difficult decisions to make, and I
Well,
wanted
I'm
to
trying to
share
add
the
it all
pressures
up.
that I see.
I can do 6 and 9. I can't do the 8.
I guess more attention and Senator Sears is, as he usually does, is trying to look at the whole system and, we know our state's attorneys are filling on their knees, with the workload, particularly with the homicides, which obviously will be going through diversion.
Hopefully not.
So it's sort of looking you can add the judges, but if you don't have the prosecutors to, prepare the cases or investigate to determine the charges, then, you're addressing one end, but without the other. So, we've got, the need for more information, so I'm glad Senator Sears is willing to kind of take a total look, because so much of what we hear is kind of piece by piece. So you have questions?
Yeah, because I'm not familiar, can you give me an example of the grantees? Like who got this, who are the grantees?
In Washington County, it's Washington Court Diversion. It's a nonprofit based in Barry. And that's, they receive funding from the Department for Children and Families, the Attorney General's office. In Lamoille County, it's the Lamoille Restorative Center, and they receive funding from our office, DCF, DOC, and many
So there are
other.
entities that are just kind of specialized in doing diversion or
In some cases, in Orleans County, it's the Community Action Agency. So it varies. In Chittenden County, it's the Burlington Community Justice Center, which is under the city of Burlington. So it varies, but they are organizations that have, we have done a competitive RFP in past years, and the organizations, for the most part, have a long time experience doing restorative justice, working with all those players that Senator Bishop was just.
Well, thank you very much for your work. You've been doing it a lot of years. I don't know how long, how many?
I came to the AG's office in 2006, fall of 2006. Yeah. It's there's I have a great group of colleagues, not just within our office, but also amongst all these community organizations.
So they're all gonna be here next Thursday, so.
Yes, thank you. Mentioned that.
And they have, I think 8:30.
Yes, first in the
And
morning.
they're gonna be joined by the Attorney General at 8:30.
Cool. Good. All
I
right.
can do school.
That's a public service announcement before I leave.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise,
I had a question for the attorney.
oh, all right, please.
I was just gonna see if I could phrase it as a budget question, but I won't do that. I'll just say like, do you have any public comment on the news about the auditors? Complaint about the Attorney General?
I don't have any
I gotta go
comments,
home.
but you can always read the
Goodbye.
papers, those are
Okay.
public.
I mean, that's all there is to say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everything we would really say, we've already written in our motion to dismiss and our reply to their opposition to our motion to dismiss.
Okay, that's good.
Thank you for that.
I just leaving
I'm-
because I didn't like the question.
I'm going to suggest that we complete the testimony for today and adjourn the committee for the week. And